Hi guys, so this video here is just going to be a little bit about my life here in Oz. A few of you have asked me, what it's like living in Australia. So I'm just going to share some of my experiences with you from when I moved to Australia back in the late 80s. So I came to Australia in '88. My dad came to Australia a year before my mum, my brother and myself came here. He came on scholarship to study at the Melbourne University. I was 4 when I came in December of '88 and I turned 5 in January. So I started my schooling here in Australia. So when we came, we were living in Melbourne, and it was pretty cool living there. There were a lot of Ghanaian families there. We went to a lot of parties, a lot of functions, we always had something to do there. Now, in regards to my early years of school, I went to a private Christian school. It was actually a Seventh-day Adventist school, and it was not too bad. I really got involved with music and singing, and I was in plays and that kind of stuff. I was very active in that area. I experienced, some racism, obviously, being the early 90s. There weren't a lot of African people here in Australia, unlike now where there's a lot of refugees, a lot of Africans have migrated here. Back then, I was actually the first African black child at the school. So as you can imagine, all the teasing, all the racist remarks, I received them all. I got called monkey, I got called gorilla, every name under the sun, I got it. And you know what, it didn't really bother me because I don't remember going home from school and crying or complaining to my parents or something like that. I was pretty immune to it. I kind of just went about my day and I guess ignored all those different comments. But I do remember, kids saying those kinds of things. One thing I do remember though was one time my mum braided my hair, and she usually braided my hair in the school holidays, so she wouldn't have to fuss with it during the school term. And I remember getting my braids done, and as you all know, if you've had braids done before, you spend like the whole day sitting down, to get the braids done. It's long, tedious, you get very tired at the end of it all, but you always are happy with the results. So I went to school the following day, and I remember being pulled aside by either the principal or a teacher, and basically they told me that I had to have the braids removed because it was considered an outrageous hairstyle. And I was so shocked that they had said something to me because, as far as I was concerned, this is what our mothers, or this is what my mother did on my hair. It was part of my culture, it was part of, what we did. So I went back home and I informed my mum and dad, and my dad was absolutely furious. He was so angry. The next day he came to school with me and obviously went to see the principal. And this is what I love about my dad. He will always put you in your place, but in the most slick, smart, educated way possible. So as they started discussing, obviously what the issue was, my dad basically told the principal point blank, my daughter will not remove the braids out of her hair the same way you cannot remove those freckles off your face. Done. Hashtag done. That was it. I was never bothered again about my hair. So eventually we left Melbourne and we moved to a really small town called Kingaroy. I think the population was about 10 or 11,000. We moved there because my dad had been transferred from his job. He had like a 5-year contract there. So, we all went with him. Now, when I say this town was really small, we were actually the only African family in the town. And you know what? It was okay living in that town. It wasn't very exciting, but we made some really good, church friends that to this day, we're still very close with. But it was funny living in that town because we were the only African family. My dad would always warn us, you kids need to make sure you're always doing the right thing, because if you mess up, they know exactly where to come and they know where to find you, because we are the only African family in this town. Then we moved to Toowoomba, where my parents are currently residing. I did my senior years there, year 11 and 12, and I graduated at Harristown State High School. It was a pretty big school, about 1,500 students. My high school years were, they were okay. I wasn't popular or anything like that. I kind of just got along with everyone because that's the kind of person that I am. But you know, there was a little bit of teasing, you know, in high school and that kind of thing. But once again, I've never been one to really let that kind of thing bother and affect me, because I know deep down in my heart, and from how my parents have raised me and from the love that they've always given me, I know who I am. So despite what other people may say about me, it never penetrates to me because I know who I am. So after I finished high school, I made sure to apply at a university outside of Toowoomba, because by then I wanted to get out of Toowoomba. Toowoomba's not a small town, but it's still considered a town. It's actually the largest inland city, I believe, in Australia. Population at that time was about 100,000, and I'm sure it's grown by now. But I made sure I applied for universities outside of Toowoomba because I wanted to move to Brisbane, which is where I'm currently living. So I studied at the University of Queensland. I initially wanted to do law, and then I think it was journalism, but then I finally settled for music because I've been singing from a young age, playing the piano from a young age. But my father, being my father, he said, you know, music is probably not something you can pursue on its own, because he's like, honestly, how many successful Black African people do you know in the music industry in Australia? And yeah, there pretty much are none. So he said, why don't you combine it with education, because there's always jobs in teaching, but you still can combine your passion for music. So that was a double degree. It was a 5-year degree. It was very stressful. I remember, I think I had like an anxiety attack in my last year because I was so overwhelmed by the workload, but I got through it and I graduated. But when I actually graduated, I wasn't interested in teaching because towards the end of my degree, I had started working in retail, and I'd really gotten into the whole retail thing. I love fashion, as you can see now. So I ended up managing a clothing store in the city. I also managed the Steve Madden concession store in Maya for a while. I really enjoyed the whole managing and that kind of thing. So I worked, I think, in retail for about 2 years until we went to Ghana in 2007. And we went for holidays there as a whole family. That was actually my first trip back to Ghana. I ended up falling in love with Ghana, and obviously I've been back numerous times since. But when I came back from that trip in 2007, I decided, okay, I actually need to utilize this degree that I've got, this 5 years that I've slaved away at. I have to use this degree. So that's when I got into teaching, and I actually started off doing substitute and relief teaching until I got my job at my current school, where I'm a primary music teacher and I teach P-6 classroom music. And that's pretty much, you know, a little rundown of my experience, my life in Australia. And I'm really, really grateful to my dad, you know, my mum for bringing us here, for the opportunities that we've had. They've always been so big on education. And you know what, growing up, my parents were not wealthy at all. They've worked so hard for everything, you know, that they've acquired. But one thing that my dad would never compromise is our education. So no matter how much, you know, money was lacking or scarce, he always made sure that, you know, our education was covered, because my parents really believe that education is the key. My parents have raised amazing children, myself and my brothers. I think we've all turned out, you know, great. It's not easy raising children outside, you know, in Western countries, because there's so many influences, there's so many factors that come into play. Even when we go back home, we have a lot of family and friends who are always so amazed that we've grown up pretty much our whole entire lives outside of Ghana, yet we're still very respectful of our elders and respectful of the Ghanaian culture and that kind of thing, because, you know, that's really important to them back home. So yeah, my parents have done an amazing job, and I'm so grateful to them, and I love them so much, and I can only hope that one day I can raise children as wonderfully as they've done. I think it's really important for us young African, you know, youth who've been given the opportunity to acquire knowledge outside, to be able to one day take it back to our countries and help, you know, build our countries up and help our countries grow. So anyway, that's a little bit about my story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.